Number one is Aspies tend to be very reliable. What we're talking about are 10 traits of Aspies that are very, very likable. Now, you say, wait a minute, people tend not to like Aspies because they are so different. I was going to say weird, but let's go with different. Well, that's true. Aspies don't tend to fit in socially, but they still have many traits that are likable. And the reason people don't like Aspies is because, well, they haven't thought about it. They haven't gotten to know these people. So if you are an Aspie, follow along with these 9 traits. See how many of these you agree with, or maybe how many of these you find evident in your own life. My name is Ken. I've been an Aspie going on 70 years. So I've learned a thing or two, and from my experience, I call that life's laboratory. I want to share with you some of those things that I have encountered, and as I've studied autism and Asperger syndrome, there too is a source of information. I want to provide that to you and make your life just a little bit better. So number one is Aspies tend to be reliable. And that, I believe, is because they tend to be very organized. Spreadsheets, as I say often, were invented for Aspies. They have a schedule. They have a routine, or routine. Their life is a routine. They have a lot of routines that are scheduled together to make life one big routine. And because of that, well, you can pretty much rely on them. Now, with all 9 of these points, there are exceptions. No two Aspies are alike, and nothing and nothing applies to every single Aspie. Number 2 is this. They tend to be what we would say agreeable and humble. I have never met an Aspie who was a narcissist. In fact, I can't recall meeting an Aspie who had traits of a narcissist. Okay, everybody has some traits of narcissist, but I'm saying where it's very evident. Or we could say it this way. I have never met an Aspie who is incredibly self-centered. And again, everybody looks out for themselves to some degree, and that's a good thing. Otherwise, we'd all be dependent on everybody else. And society works much better when people take care of themselves. But Aspies are not so arrogant, so narcissistic that they become a pain. They're just difficult to live with. I've had people in my life, speaking of narcissism, who are just toxic. I cannot be around these people. Okay, this person. I can think of one person that I cannot be in the same room with. Seriously. Now, I know a lot of people who have narcissistic traits, so I can still endure them. But the point is, that doesn't fit an Aspie, an Aspergian. That's just not the way we tend to be. If anything, they tend to be too humble. They tend to be too empathetic. They tend to be too giving. Yeah, empathy. We talk about affective empathy and cognitive empathy. They're not the same. People with Asperger syndrome are affectionate. That is to say, they have affective empathy. They don't display that affection. They don't like hugs. They don't like touches. They don't like eye contact in particular. They don't like small talk. So that display is not, or that affection is not on display. You can't see it, but it is felt. They care about other people. Just don't hug them. Personally, I don't even like to shake people's hands. You reach out to shake my hand, you get a fist bump. Number 3 is Aspies tend to be very unselfish. You would be hard-pressed to find an Aspie who is selfish, just like you'd be hard-pressed to find an Aspie who has traits of a narcissist. Rather, once again, they have that affective empathy trait that is under the surface, but it seems to always be there with very few exceptions. So that trait has a dark side. It's got a bad side to it in that the fact that they are unselfish makes them easy prey for narcissists, well, for just about anybody who wants to take advantage of somebody. So that unselfish nature, that willingness to help out people will take advantage of that, and they will sometimes really exploit the Aspie, because they are so giving. So if you have Asperger syndrome as you get older, the thing that I have learned, and man, I've learned this the hard way, is I have learned, you just can't give everything away. You got yourself to take care of, you got your family to take care of. They come first. That's a hard lesson to learn. I mean, you want to give everybody the best deal. You want to make sure everybody gets a huge tip, or whatever. And that's okay to do that, but there's got to be a limit to it. Number 5 is this. We actually did an entire video on this. You will want to watch that video because, hey, it's really enlightening. But one of the traits of people with Asperger syndrome is they are incredibly honest. When we say they are honest, we mean that they find it extremely difficult to tell a lie. Now, I guess that's kind of obvious, but we have to keep in mind that being honest and being accurate are not the same thing. Because sometimes, and this is true of everybody, we think that we are being honest, we think we are being accurate, but in reality, what we are doing is we are repeating something that we've learned from somebody else that we believe to be true. So let's say, for example, this is a radical illustration, but say, for example, that you were brought up as an Aspie being taught the world was flat. You believe that to be true. And so you tell people the world is flat because you are honest. And it doesn't matter what anyone else says, you know that to be true. In your mind, well, it's not true, it's inaccurate. So we see that Aspies are honest, but, they can get caught in that trap where they believe something that isn't true. But the point is they believe it's true. So that goes back to number 1, they're reliable. When an Aspie speaks, typically, with exceptions, everyone has faults, but with few exceptions, when an Aspie speaks, they actually believe what they say. So they are very, very honest. Just be careful when you deal with Aspies, or if you are an Aspie, be very careful that you evaluate what they're saying, because even though they think they are being accurate and they have this obsession with the truth, they could be mistaken. Just something to throw out there. Number 6 is this, and I love this one. Aspies are not forceful. Okay, I love this one, but again, sometimes people with Asperger syndrome are just not forceful enough. So they seldom force themselves on other people. Again, this kind of goes back to, we were talking earlier about narcissists, and they force themselves on people. I've got a channel that deals with nothing but narcissism. You may want to take a look at that. But narcissists have to have everything their way all the time. They don't wait for anybody, ever. Well, unless they absolutely positively have to. You eat what they think you should eat. You go where they think you should go. They control you all the time. They are the center of the universe. Well, the people who are empaths and Aspies are the antithesis of narcissists. They're the opposite. What's interesting is there are only about, I think the number of narcissists, I mean clinical narcissists, not people with traits, from what I've read, are about 1% of the population in the United States. That's a significant number, but there's one chance out of 100 that you're going to encounter a narcissist. So if you are a little bit off track here, but if you are an Aspie, an Aspergian, you may be wondering, well, that can't be right because I've got at least 6 or more narcissists in my life, or maybe you have 5 or 4 or 3, whatever, but more than one. That is because, and that's kind of a compliment, but that is because narcissists tend to seek out empaths. They tend to seek out people who are Aspies. So if you have multiple narcissists in your life, that's kind of a compliment because it's saying basically, you're a nice guy, you're a nice person, and they see that and they take advantage of it. So in a sense, it's kind of a compliment, but that's a rough way to pay a compliment. All right, so number 6 is Aspies are not forceful. They don't demand that others do what they want to do the way they want to do it all the time, like a narcissist. And to repeat myself for emphasis, Aspies and empaths tend to be the antithesis, the opposite of narcissists. Number 7 is this. This is a little bit complicated because narcissists, Aspies, Aspergians, are known for their patience with boundaries. Now, the way this works is this. They're born being very patient people, and they're trotted off to elementary school where they are, at the best, ignored, but quite often they are bullied. I was fortunate when I was growing up. I didn't have a lot of bullying. I just ignored. I was like the invisible kid when I went to school. Nobody even noticed I was there. Never got in trouble, never did anything out of line, never talked to anybody, didn't participate in anything. I just the invisible kid. But a lot of Aspies find that they're physically and emotionally bullied in elementary school and even into high school. And what they learn because of that is they have to, as a matter of survival, they have to set up boundaries. That is why so many people with Asperger syndrome find themselves deep in depression, is because they have faced this abuse all their life, and they have this perception of the world that it is abusive and that they are misplaced. They don't belong there. And some people with Asperger syndrome, they go to the extreme, to the point where they're I probably shouldn't say that. It's get me dinged on YouTube. But they have a problem often with depression. But fortunately, many Aspies learn as they get older that they have to build boundaries, erect boundaries. So they are patient, they will wait on people, but in time, they learn to build boundaries. And that takes us to number 8. And number 8 is this. One of the likable traits of Aspies is they have self-respect. Now, I think everybody knows that there is a difference between arrogance, hubris, and self-respect. By that we mean, and this I think is kind of like patience in that it is a learned trait. I think we are born with self-respect or self-reliability. But then we learn, that is, we being Aspies, we learn to disrespect ourselves, to hate ourselves because everybody else does, so we must be flawed. Now, cognitively, we know that's not true, but, 5, 6, 7-year-old kid in school, he doesn't have that cognitive maturity to think through all this, and everybody rejects him or her, and because of that, everyone disrespects them, sometimes extremely so. And so they just assume I must be the oddball out. I'm the guy who's flawed. And they sometimes even hate themselves. That's kind of repeating what we talked about with patience. But in time, they learn to have self-respect. They learn these traits that we're talking about now, that these are actually advantages over many other people. It's some people call them superpowers, our abilities to do things that other people don't do. We have traits that others don't have. Patience being one of them, and self-respect. A lot of people have self-respect. Some people, like we were talking about narcissists, it goes beyond, it transcends. It goes beyond self-respect and it becomes just selfish. And there is a huge difference. And so once again, not to repeat myself painlessly, but that can lead to being taken advantage of, particularly little kids who don't know, elementary age kids who just don't know how to defend themselves, and so that results in some very unpleasant circumstances as children. Number 9 is this, and this is another one that I really love, and that is one of the likable traits of Aspies is that they are unapologetic. That is because Aspies think rationally rather than emotionally. That's not to say they don't have emotions, but they approach life from a rational perspective. And so they like to do things right. They like to get it right the first time, and if it's not right the first time, they'll do it a second time. They just want it done right because they like things in order. They like things systemic. They like things that are reliable, things that are dependable. They like things that work, that function. And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't function, they'll fix it. Now, because of that, they tend not to make a lot of mistakes. I mean, intentional mistakes. They make mistakes because they're human, but a lot of people, they just slough off and they make mistakes and don't care. And they know they make mistakes, but not so much with Aspies. And so they just don't have a whole lot to apologize for because they just don't screw up that much. And if they do, it's not intentional. And you don't apologize if you make a mistake that's unintentional. Usually, sometimes you may have to, but they don't have to go through life apologizing for everything. I know, if you are an Aspie, you may say, well, I'm not sure that applies to me because I'm finding myself apologizing for just about, every war that was ever fought throughout human history. Somehow it's my fault and I apologize. That's a little extreme, I know, but if you are one of those Aspies who find yourself apologizing for everything, maybe you're going a little bit overboard. You're not responsible for everything. You're just not. And if you are, you will apologize, typically, because because you're honest. You take responsibility for something that you did that was not done correctly, and it bothers you immensely. So, yeah, you want it set straight. You want the record set straight. So if you are one of those empaths, one of those Aspies who is constantly apologizing, you might want to sit back and reevaluate why you do that. Look on the screen. You see those two rectangles? You know why they're there? Because even though this presentation has come to a close, it goes on and on and on. We have scores of videos just like this one. So immerse yourself in more education about Asperger syndrome.